Okay. On my mind, quite often these days, is the subject of fear and how fear manifests in the world that we see. So today I asked the question, okay, what is fear? Okay. And I was given what seems to me just really a definition. And the definition that I was given is fear is the vibration or song that is sung when you are operating in a lower frequency of expression. Okay, so I waited for more to come and it didn't. So I'm like, okay, so you've given me just a flat out, like I looked it up in the dictionary and here it is. But how fear shows up, I'm going to use just really plain terms. How fear shows up for us is in so many ways that it's very difficult to even, I couldn't list them all, okay? But no matter what it looks like, no matter what label we give the fear, it's all the same thing. It's all this, what they say, vibration. So I'm going to unpack this as best I can. Fear is, how it shows up for us is, it is anything that hides, suppresses, overshadows that which we truly are. So this can come in the form of thoughts that we give our attention to. Okay, thoughts that we give our attention to. So what this means is thoughts come and go, come and go. Thoughts come from all different places and influences, okay? Now, what is the difference between a thought and a thought that actually shows up or becomes part of our experience? Okay, becomes. The difference between just a random thought and a thought that becomes is we give it our divine focus and attention. So we are operating with the power of God. We are that, okay, in form. So the power of God is present with us always. When we give our attention to a thought, it becomes something. If that is understood, becomes something, okay? It's not just out there in the ether anymore. We've given it power. We have given it power because we are power, okay? So that is one way that fear can become part of our experience, is through the thoughts that we give power to, but I'm looking for something else. Thoughts that we empower, right? Thoughts that we empower into form or manifestation. All right. So that's one way. Let me pause real quick. Okay, so everything begins at the level of thought. So it begins in what I'm going to call ether. Probably not the right word for it, but it is the great span of infinite potential. Okay, so all things are available. God gives all things. All things are available in their potential or potentiality. Thought, then, is almost like a wave that occurs because it occurs. So it occurs to a mind. And because we are all part of the Christ mind, a thought that occurs in any mind of Christ, anywhere, any one of the Christ minds, it is then available to the rest of the Christ minds. Okay? So then you have one Christ who has empowered a thought, and then the thought is out there, has a little bit more strength now, see? Because it has been given power by one Christ. If the thought then is empowered by another, and another, and another, and another, eventually this is how things actually seem to happen in our world. And I say seem to because this is how they play out. We can say happen and have it be that. So there's that. It is brought into experience or manifestation through the power of thought of the Christ. Okay? Then, once it is here, let us say, once it is here and it is seen and it is being actively expressed, then how do we decide who it affects and who it does not affect, or into whose experience it comes and whose it does not come into? And that is based on the frequency of the one. So if I am a Christ who has not empowered that thought, it is not part of my experience in the same way, because I don't have a preference for it. I don't have a drawing to it. I don't have or drawing it to me. Okay? So, the example I will give is my husband grew up not too far from where I grew up, but he had such a different experience of like school years and teachers and things that occurred for him in his school development. And even though I grew up at relatively the same time in relatively the same place, very localized, my experience was completely different. Now, they weren't the same schools, but it was the same time period in the same general area. And our experiences were so incredibly different. And why is that? It's because where we were aligning in our frequency, in our vibration. So I have heard it stated from different sources, and this is a good way of looking at it. These things are not to be judged. So if what seems like bad things are happening to a certain person, we can't judge the person and say, well, you obviously are a bad person because these bad things are happening in your experience. That's not true at all. So, and the best way to validate what I'm saying here about non-judgment is some people, some Christs incarnate into human form, into situations that are appalling. And that is to bring the situations to light for healing. It takes a massive amount of love and compassion to incarnate into a life as someone that's going to do horrific things, okay? That's going to be awful to the other humans. That takes an amazing amount of love and compassion at the level of Christ, at the level of the soul. Because as the human, the guilt, shame, etc. that is experienced because of those actions is incredible, is of such magnitude that, who would really want to choose that for themselves? So when we see these things from this higher level, we know the perfect purposefulness of all these things, even when they seem really awful, okay? It's all about the healing of the world that we are a part of. And I say world. Why did I say world? Because it's greater than my block, my community, my state, my country, my planet. It's beyond that even. So we must be careful about those judgments as well when we see fear playing out, manifesting in what appears to be these forms that we see. We must know that there is a reason for it, and the reason for it is divine. Understand that. The reason for it is divine. Because just as every experience is intended to bring you closer to who you truly are and align you to the Christ that you are, which is true. Every experience we have is to lead us, guide us, encourage us. I heard push, but I'm going to say encourage us into the direction of accepting, acknowledging, and taking on the name of Christ, the truth of that. So, as many have said, if a person is still operating in this frequency of expression where fear is the teacher, okay, because at the lower, the guides say octaves, at the lower octaves, fear is the teacher, okay? Challenge, struggle, strife, lack, inadequacy, shame, guilt, all of this is a teacher at this level of fear frequency. And fear encompasses all that is not the divine Christ, okay? Because the divine Christ is love. That is all it is. That is the truth of it in its absolute form. And I say absolute a lot. Absolute, the absolute is love, the absolute is God. It is that with no overshadow, with no shadow of any kind, okay? Because shadow is a distortion of it. Shadow is the thing that distracts us from the truth of who we are. That is also, shadow is also fear. They are equal in that way. And shadow and fear can show up in your experience and in my experience as anything that is not the truth of me. Anything that is not absolute love. So let us keep that in mind. So everything starts at the level of first potentiality, then thought, then empowerment of thought by a Christ. And then things can actually come into manifestation. At the level of thought, a thought becomes. And the becoming of a thought is, it is given the potential to become yet something greater. Okay? It's almost like a particle attracting more particles to itself until it grows big enough to show up in front of you, that you can see it. All right. So because we are all here as the collective that is Christ, Christ is not one of us, it is all of us, even though we are having an individuated experience. Christ is the only begotten of the Father, okay? And anyone who is a Christ is part of that, only begotten of the Father. So even in the aspects of the animals that we see, even in the aspects of the trees, the plants, on and on and on, the air, the atmosphere, etc., all of this is part of Christ, because it is a piece of the whole. It's a piece of everything. Nothing is separate at all. Christ is a piece of God. It is part of God. It cannot be separated from God. Though, in order for us to have the experience that we do, right, we seem like we're separate. We seem like we are individuated. What is individuated is only the focus of attention. The point of attention is the only thing that is individuated. That process is done by what people call the ego. Okay, so it is an identity structure. And with the identity structure, the small self identity structure, what it does is it focuses a Christ's attention in a specific way that the experience can be had as it is intended. And we say intended because that is the highest level of experience, the one that is intended, which is kind of like saying at the level of soul, this is what you've come here for. As the pure absolute focus of attention of Christ in the form of Missy, this is really what we're asking you to do, what we're asking you to see, hear, experience, express, feel, all of that, okay? So, and there are those who do incarnate as the role players of the bad actions, what we call bad actors, right? They incarnate for that purpose. And sometimes, I'm going to pause for just a second. Thank you. Okay. So sometimes these bad actors incarnate without a lot of conscience, what we call conscience, which just means the guilt shame response. Okay. Luckily for them, they don't have it. Luckily for them, they don't feel the guilt and the shame from what they've done. Why do I say that? How can I say lucky for them, they don't feel it? Because at the level of Christ, at the level of the divine, we know them as our brothers and sisters. We know them as no different than or separate from us. They are us. They are us playing that role. Okay? And at that level, I say, oh my gosh, thank goodness I'm not the one playing that role, because my human, my self-identity, my small self-identity would not be able to tolerate that. I would not be able to handle that. So all of this teaching that they have been doing through me lately and bringing out messages saying, you know, when you see these horrific things, rape, murder, abuses of children, abuses of animals, and you see all of these things and you're like, there is no way that's God. You can't say that that's God. And I can say absolutely it is. How is that? Because if we want to talk about it in more dogmatic terms, if we want to speak of it in more dogmatic terms, God sent his son, his daughter, whoever's the one doing the abusing, the murdering, the stealing, the whatever, sent them here in that role for the awakening of any that they are involved with to the truth of their Christedness. Okay? Now, there are those who will say, no, the only begotten. Why, you know, we all start out, we are all at our core start out. That's kind of hard to say because that has too many layers to it. We are all the perfect child of God who has been given different roles to play here on this plane for whatever intention, whatever reason, whatever purpose. Because at the level of divine, at God, at spirit, at that level of Christ, mind, consciousness, if, again, to use dogmatic terms, if the Father says, go here and do this, we say, yes, Father, thank you, and yes, Father. Okay? We say thank you and yes. Thank you for allowing me to serve. Okay? So then you incarnate. It's that simple. The complexity, which isn't really complex, but the complexity occurs when we continue to incarnate with all of this baggage. Yes, baggage. It is just layers and layers and layers of experience, of empowered thought that has become intrinsic within a system. So, okay. So here's the system, right? It's the human experience. What is happening now? We're all talking about this great awakening that is happening, which is true, okay? And you have to look at statements that are made from different perspectives, okay? So we can say, yes, it is a great awakening. We can also say that it's not really an awakening, but it is an opportunity for a happier dream. It is an opportunity for all of us as the human race to have a happier dream. We have asked for it. We have said, we want no more. We want no more of this struggle. We want no more of this strife. We want no more of this working 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing something that we don't enjoy. We want more of the relationships and the joy in the relationships. We want more of the nurturing of our children. We want more of these things that we have gotten further and further away from as time has gone. At least this time around. So we're saying, oh, we really liked that. I don't know if I'm going to get into that here. We really liked the experience when life was what we would call simpler, where, we were all homesteaders, honestly. We had our own fruits, vegetables. We had our own things to, if you think about the Garden of Eden, you think about the Garden of Eden, everything in my mind, when I think about the Garden of Eden, everything was just available to us, right? The climate was perfect. We didn't need to worry about shelter. We didn't need to worry about where we were going to get water. We had water running, clean water running freely. We had okay. If enough of us want to have the Eden experience, how do we get there? We get there by cleaning up all the mess we've made up until this point. So in order to do that, we have to see the demise of the things that have contributed to the mess. That's where we are. We are in this transition period where we are doing away with the things that have helped to create the mess so that we can get back to the happy dream, which is a healthy planet, a healthy ecosystem, things in harmony, peaceful existence, on and on and on. And the unraveling of the fear, the unraveling of the things that contributed to this, which are in that frequency of fear, which are part of that, it is a process. So that's where we're at. I say this only because, there are some who still need to have these hellacious experiences And in order to have a hellacious experience on the receiving end, you have to have another Christ who's willing to be the one dishing it out. So keep that in mind as you watch things play out in the world. Keep that in mind as you hear the politics. There has to be a bad guy in order for a good guy. And if that is still part of the learning process for many, that's what will be called into being by the ones who are asking for it. So the soul wants to bring us to a higher level of understanding of who we truly are. Okay? That's what awakening is. It is just realizing who we really are, that we are Christ playing roles on this planet. Okay? And then saying, who do you want to be? Who do you really want to be? How is this action, behavior, thought serving you? And that's where we are on a global level, on a mass scale. We are in that process of deciding, not only deciding, for the decision has already been made, but we are deciding how we are choosing our path forward, because the path is already chosen. But within that chosen path, there are many avenues of the journey or journeying. There are many avenues that one can take on within that path. So each of us are now deciding which avenue we are going to choose on the path forward, because that is the only way now, is the path forward. So even though sometimes it seems like things are breaking down more than they are improving, we must be aware to be grateful for the breakdown, because the breakdown is allowing the new to come in. It is allowing the mother is, okay, yes, right. So invention is the mother of necessity, I think. Did I say that right? Okay. So invention is the mother of necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention. I don't know, whichever way it is. So I'm getting the words, I'm getting the concept, but it's not in, the words aren't always in the right order. So, okay, but that is a quote. And when it's spoken correctly, whatever that looks like. So this time right now, the breakdowns are creating the need for new, for the emergence. Thank you. Okay, they're stepping in a little more. For the emergence of new technologies, for the emergence of even technologies that have been here and have not been made available to the public. Thank you. Okay, so there you go. There's that. Okay, so and also when there is a need, when a need is detected, one can choose what they do about that as well. Okay, so a need doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a state of lack. A need can mean, oh, I have this, I want this, and I know exactly, or instead of saying, oh, I want this and I don't have it, it's, oh, I want this, and what can I do to get that? What, it's within my power because I want it. Am I willing to do, what am I willing to do to get that? Okay, so that's the other thing, because there are so many possibilities. When you get beyond the fear to a degree, because again, I am still not beyond fear completely. when you get beyond fear to a certain degree, you start to see the multitude of potentials, the multitude of paths available, the multitude of, it's almost overwhelming. It's almost overwhelming because, you know, your focus, yes, your focus starts to expand so much that suddenly you can see all of the options that you never saw before. When we are, okay, they're showing me a flashlight. So when you have a flashlight, some of these flashlights, you can twist the handle or twist the front part, and the beam of light goes from, this real skinny beam of light, and as you turn it, the beam begins to expand this way, okay? And it illuminates more and makes more visible. That's what they're showing me. That's the imagery I'm getting. As we shed the layers of fear, or as we rise through the frequencies where fear is more prominent and the fear drops away, it is as if we are expanding that beam of the flashlight, and more and more and more is seen. Okay? And the more that is seen is the reality of God gives all things. God gives all things. Which thing are you going to direct your focus on? So, which path are you going to direct your focus on? So there's always that about the path, right? Or what was the saying from Jesus about, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man. Oh, they say rich man to enter the kingdom of God, but it's not really rich. That's not what they mean. The meaning is, they say rich, but they don't mean rich. They mean for one who is attached to the things of the world, the illusion. Okay, so it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for the man who is attached to the illusion to enter the kingdom of God. So the illusion is separation. The illusion simply means separation. Separation is a byproduct of fear, or fear is a byproduct of separation. Either way you look at it, they're which one came first, the chicken or the egg? So why I was asked to speak about this, let me pause and see if I can tune in to anything else. Okay, they want me to come back to this visual of the flashlight and the beam as it is expanding. And there's a bit of a caution here, okay? As the beam expands and all of these options are seen that were not seen before, it's very important to maintain a clear focus, and not clear as in direct or clear focus is that, okay, I'm hearing permeated, all right. Clear focus is that as the view is widened, as your gaze is being expanded, be sure to stay aligned to the truth of your divinity as Christ. That you can filter out, okay? You can filter out, transform and transcend there will be a risk. There will be a risk of wanting to exclude the things that come into view. So they're saying clarity of vision is important because at every step, at every juncture, they say at every juncture, there will be a temptation to reinforce separation through exclusion. Thank you. Okay. As the focus is expanded, as your vision is expanded, effort is needed to keep clear the vision, to keep clarity in the vision. Okay. All right. I got it. Okay. So now what I'm seeing is this beam from the flashlight has been expanded. But when that flashlight beam was very directed, it was very bright in the center. That first light beam that was smaller was extremely bright. And as the beam expanded this way, it seemed to get dimmer. And they're saying you must maintain that really strong focus, which is the connection to the divine, the connection to the true self. That way, as the path is illuminated, as the options become available, you don't get derailed or pulled away from your path, because now you see all of the things that are possible. Okay? And I understand that because, when in recent times, can I use myself? I'm going to use myself. In recent times, I have seen this expanded view of the world and the things that I see, and I have seen traps in them, and traps meaning I can see the temptations that a Christ could be pulled away from. In other words, fall back to sleep. Okay? So as the view expands, more temptations kind of come in because your awareness is greater of the potential. And I think that once you reach that point of this expanded awareness, this expanded view, I believe that the connection to the divine, the connection, the amount of Christ living through the form, the amount, I hope this is being clear. Okay, to the extent that the Christ has embodied, which simply means when Christ is living you more than your worldly identity is living you, I believe we will not succumb to those temptations. It's kind of like the story of Jesus in the desert, right? When he was tempted by whoever, they say tempted by Satan, but that's not what it is. Tempted by, the temptation to perform acts within his power for grandeur. Okay, do you see the trappings there? Because now you have these abilities, you have this greater vision, and the temptation that comes in to use that in a way that is self-aggrandizing. So I feel I have faith in us that as even if we do what I call backslide, even if we backslide a little bit, I have faith that we'll come back online. I have faith that we'll come back quickly. I have faith that we won't backslide so much or sidestep so much that we lose that really bright center focus. And that is the one caution that I was given, was like, as that center focus becomes illuminated, or as the beam becomes widened and more is illuminated, to make sure that we are maintaining that really bright center focus, because that is each of us in our individualized experience, that bright focus of attention. And allow that to, and also too, they're saying that now, you know, that beam that is expanding, that vision that is widening and showing more, exposing more, we must maintain that strength of focus so that we can actually be the beam when we are in a position of darkness. Be that beam so that the beam of light that you are irradiates out from you and illuminates the surrounding. So that's another thing that they're expressing in that too. So for whatever that's worth, I'm going to have to go back and watch this and see what we're going to call it, because I had no idea where this was going. In peace and love, may you be blessed.